Welcome to Our Drummers Musicians. I'm your host Luke, and today I'm joined by Myles Mumford, a producer, engineer, composer and musician whose work has been shaping the Melbourne music scene for over 2 decades. Myles has been making music and records since the late 90s, starting with trombone and composition before moving to Melbourne in 2002 to study at the VCA, where he later ran their recording studio. Since then, he's worked across record production, film and theatre sound, location recording, and concert production, earning ARIA nominations, Bell Awards, Music Victoria Awards, a Green Room Award, and more. In 2014, he co-founded Rolling Stock Recording Rooms in Collingwood, which has since become a creative hub for artists across genres. He has also worked internationally, spending a year in Swaziland building a recording studio, producing radio shows, and working with local artists whose music dominated the Swazi Top 20 for over a year. In this episode, we discuss his journey through music, the balance of art and commerce in the industry, the philosophy behind making great records, and the importance of creative spaces like Rolling Stock. We also touch on gatekeeping in the music industry, his work as a composer, and his belief that great music exists everywhere, beyond genre boundaries. This was an insightful, inspiring, and thought-provoking conversation. I hope you enjoy. Well, mate, please, make yourself as comfortable as...
Can we swap sides?
Yeah, sure.
I'm sure we'll talk about it. I'm a bit of a mic nerd.
No, that's fine.
And I hate SM7s.
Thanks. There you go. Take one.
No, I have to say, your the sound quality, I was actually wondering what microphones you were using and what your rig was, and because your sound quality on your podcast is great.
Oh, thank you, Myles. That is lovely.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Got some cans for you.
You got the good shit.
Well, I can't have a bunch of musicians and record makers over. Well,
you can.
That's true. There you go.
I have to say, I'm always a bit weird to be on this side of the microphone.
Well, it's part of the fun, right? We get to talk to someone that's not normally doing the talking.
Yeah.
The SM7 is just on loan from a mate because I needed a microphone, and then I bought the RE20 because I love it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I own an SM7 because people request them, but I tell whenever anybody asks when they say, "Oh, should I get an SM7?" I'm like, no, you should get an RE20 or a RE320. There's a few options, but better in every circumstance that you think that an SM7 would be good for. But our whole industry is full of people that are basing it on somebody else's point of view. And so somebody sees somebody with an SM7, they're like, oh, okay, I better get the SM7. And then 5 other people see that person with the SM7, and then 1,000 other people, and it just...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was big when it came out, right? Michael Jackson's Thriller is SM7 vocals.
It's a bit more complex than that.
Okay.
Because if you do deep dives, and I don't, generally speaking, do those kind of deep dives, but people who do, you'll find, they might have had a few microphones, and then you'll hear somebody saying, oh no, they used this MyLab VM something, and you're like, oh, okay, and then you'll read somewhere else that it was something else, and I think that was Bruce Sweden who engineered that one, and again, there's different viewpoints on stuff, and alternative facts, perhaps.
Yes.
And I try not to pay any attention to that stuff. It ends up being in this kind of hype world that actually isn't, the number one thing that matters is what's happening just before the microphone. And people get hung up on the microphone and the technology when they should have been hung up on what was happening in front of the microphone. And that's, 9 times out of 10, way more than that, The microphone selection, it can contribute to what's happening in front of it, but the important thing is what's happening in front of it. And we've all heard recordings that are not great fidelity that we love, and we're not going, oh, no, they really should have used better microphone there. And an engineer might sit there and go, yeah, they really should have, and it's peaking and it's whatever. But the vast majority of listeners are going, oh, I love that song. That's it.
Yeah. I'm so fascinated by how you've said, like, people come in and request a 57. Is that because, like, you're noticing people have that, like, they want the gear because they're not even thinking, like, oh, I'm coming in to make a record. They're like, I'm coming in and I want that thing because that's what's going to make it or something?
Yeah, totally. A lot of the time, those aren't the people I enjoy working with so much. But that's a bit harsh. When like people have a complex relationship with everything to do with music making, whether it's a vintage guitar, whether it's a lucky jumper, whether it's a venue that they like to play, whether the place has natural light or not, all these things feed in, and equipment is the same thing, and people need to feel what they need to feel in that moment. And if they've seen their favorite artist, or their favorite, whatever, and they're using that microphone, they're like, well, I want to use that. Like, of course, right? And so they'll see, classic ones, of course, is people will see a microphone in a music video and they'll be like, oh, well, that's the microphone they use. Like, it's absolutely not, because it's pointed at the ceiling and they're singing into the wrong end of it. That's not, you see that in, music bio movies and whatever. But I understand why people request things. Now, obviously, sometimes they request it because they've used it before and they feel comfortable with it. Great. Or they think that it sounds really great for them. That's also great. No microphone is great for everything. And not even close. So even though I prefer the ARIA 20 over the SM7 every time I've used it, it isn't to say that someday I'll use it or somebody will request it and I'll be like, actually, it's great for that. And I'll discover that and that'll be cool. But, to get back to your question about equipment, that complex relationship means that you've got to kind of ride with what people want, or what might inspire somebody, or what might make somebody feel comfortable. And I think very much, there's lots of different ways to be an engineer or a producer or a music supporter, or any of these kinds of terms. And the things that inspire people and the things that make people comfortable they're not necessarily the same, but they're important for people to create, for people to do their thing really, really well. And I will do what I can to make that happen. So even if I think, I don't want to use an SM7, I don't think it'd be good in this scenario, I might be able to explain why, rather than just go, no, we're not going to do that.
Yes.
And I will have hopefully I'll have some way of explaining why that makes sense to them. I could say, well, I think this is going to sound better. That's a pretty simple explanation, but that may make them feel like, oh, okay, great. That's what I want. I want to sound better. So we'll use the thing that sounds better. But I might tell them something else about that. For instance, you might say, well, okay, you want to use this SM7. I don't think that's a great choice. Here's a reason why. And then while I'm getting out another microphone, I might tell them about this other microphone. I could be telling them about the qualities of the microphone. I could be telling them about the history of the microphone. I could be telling them about this particular microphone, what I've done with it or what somebody else has done with it. And all of that can go into, telling a story that allows them to be comfortable in that space, or excited by that space, or interested in that space, or inspired. And that can really contribute to somebody having a great experience and a great music making experience. And that's it.
I guess it's so much of the like human aspect of like the music making, where you're in that role of trying to, you know, make the best music you can by making the artist feel as comfortable. And so when there's conflict over like gear, that's such an interesting way of being like, oh, well, let's make it a story so that I can allow you to get more excited about this thing, because, you know, in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, well, I don't want to put that microphone on this because of X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that's like the number one thing I think I want is for people to be passionate, right? You put passion into something, other people respond to that passion. Now, there are things that I'm interested in, that I'm into, that other people are not going to be into. That's fine. But if I can give them a little hint of my passion in that thing, they'll be interested for a short period of time. Because if I'm passionate about it, they'll be like, oh, that seems interesting. You know, it might keep them interested for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever. But that can provide a framework for something to happen, or for them to sort of, you know, move through a moment in time. And a lot of record making, people can be very charged. They can be very tense about it. They can be, you know, there's a lot riding there for them. Whether it's, you know, their first album or their 10th album, whether it's their, you know, whether it's the thing that they always do, just, you know, they make records, or whether it's the thing that's like, well, usually I play live, and now I'm in an environment where I'm not playing live. There is no audience. And then what the thing that we're going to do here, people are going to listen to it and they're going to analyze it. Or maybe they won't listen to it, you know. There's a lot of, you know, like charged experiences there. And yeah, you need to find ways to keep people, like I say, comfortable, but inspired. Like you know, you don't want them just sitting around going, yeah, this is cool, I like this. Yeah, you're like, well, geez, you really didn't deliver there, because, you know, and conversely, you know, they might be really passionate. You're like, man, you seriously overcooked that. Like, how do you say that? Like,
yeah. I guess that's like what keeps like your repeat customers coming back. Like I was excited to talk to you because I feel like I know so many musicians that talk about you or like their experience working with you, and it just seems to be like this overwhelming positive experience and like excitement of like coming into your space that you've made. And yeah, I guess it's like your years of experience and working on different ways to do that. And I'm sure there would have been like some hilarious times where you've, you know, tried to tell someone kindly that like that maybe wasn't the best and it came out not quite right. But, you know, like...
I mean, that definitely happens.
But you're clearly passionate about making such a good space and the musician comfortable, rather than just like a, you know, a guy who sits behind the desk, like maybe at like a live sound venue that like we've all experienced. It's like a bit angry and jaded to be there.
Yeah. I think, you know, like, I mean, there's a couple of things I'd say about that. One is every now and then I'll have somebody say, oh man, that was a really great experience. That was, you know, it was just so easy and you know, you made that so smooth and you know, and I'll be like, oh, what's it usually like then? Because I don't want it to be other than this, you know, like,
yes.
I don't, you know, and I've had that conversation with a few of my my studio colleagues, and we're like, yeah, so many people come with an expectation that it's going to be a difficult experience, and I understand, you know, like I was saying, you know, like the charged nature of making recordings, but you know, people on my side of the glass should not be making that. We should not be contributing to that difficulty. And it can be, I think, and also in live sound scenarios, it can feel very much at times in a sort of an industry-wide thing that there's an us and them kind of thing, which is really strange. I mean, we're all, hopefully, we should be there all for the same reason, which is, you know, I went to the, I try to go to a lot of gigs, which, you know, thankfully I seem to have a constitution that I can do that. Like I got into bed at like 2 a.m. and, you know, was up with the kids, I don't know, before 7. And that's not too uncommon. Yeah, anyway.
Wow.
But like the audience was there to have a great time, and they were having a great time. It was the Hootangers at the Punters Club.
Oh, cool.
And I mean, it was midnight, like, and the band were having a great time. The idea that there would be somebody in between those two groups of people going, oh no, don't do that. Oh, you know, no, I'm not going to turn it up for you. Or, I mean, that's weird. And then the idea that the band is looking at them going, give us what we want, come on, and them not understanding that that person is actually trying their best to do that very thing, and maybe for any number of reasons, that thing can't be achieved in that moment in time. And, you know, it ends up kind of being this kind of war, but there's also this kind of war at times between the engineer and the audience. And the audience is sitting there going, man, I can't hear the vocals. And you're like, yeah, I understand you can't hear the vocals. I can't hear them either. The guitar amp is so loud, I can't do anything about it. Don't put this on me, you know. And there's this, I don't know, like there's this 3-way thing, and then it's not fun. And the idea that we should be setting up that as a paradigm is weird. Yeah. Rather than going, hey, we are all here together. We all want to make this a great experience. And we also wanted to make it a transparent experience. We don't want people going, you know, man, that was so hard. I had to like really overcome this thing. It's like, you know, I want to go to the gig and have a great time. No matter where I am in that gig, if I'm on the stage, if I'm at the desk, if I'm in the audience, I want it to be great, and I want all the people around me to be having a great time. Yeah.
So what gets you passionate about record making?
I think that one's really hard to encapsulate. I've had some unbelievably special experiences making records. I've been a part of the journey of personal expression that making records is. I've contributed to that, and those are really, you know, wonderful things. I also really enjoy the technical aspect of it. For the most part, the technical aspect is relatively boring. Like, you know, people who want to like nerd out about gear, you know, that was interesting when I was 20. There's aspects about gear that I'm happy to nerd out about, but like the big chunks of it, I'm just not that fussed about. Like, I have a love of vintage Australian equipment. I have an interesting collection of that, but at the end of the day, like, I want to use it, and I want to put it up and use it, and if it doesn't work, or it sounds funny, or it's got a buzz in it, like, I just don't want to play with that, right? But there is something really special about the technical aspect that I quite enjoy. There's also like massive amounts of logical problem solving that goes into making records, and I quite enjoy that. There's the I don't know, like I have these experiences and they are wonderful. They also feel quite exclusive, and there's a part of that that's like, you know, I go to a gig, I'm sharing that experience hopefully with lots of people, you know, well, and sometimes not with lots of people, you know. Sometimes you have a gig that's 10 people. I mean, I saw Barney McCall and John Slater at the Jazz Lab a couple of months ago, and I could only stay for, you know, like 3 songs. I was actually at the Jazz Lab to pick something up. Kids had gone to bed, and I was like, sweet, I can run down to the Jazz Lab, get the stuff that I left there, come back here, and probably, you know, have a bath and go to bed. Sweet. But, you know, I caught 3 songs, Danny Fisher on drums, Ben Hanlon on double bass, and there were 10 people, 12 people maybe.
Wow.
And
What a great
it's
band.
it was a great band. Like, it was Monday night, I think. I stayed for 3 songs, and they were, it was beautiful. And there was nobody was having conversations. They were sitting down at the tables, engaging with the band. It was wonderful. So, lots of people at a gig, a few people at a gig, but in a studio, it can be me and the artist, or me and a selection of artists, and we're there to make the best thing that we can make. And that's incredibly special. And people like it's a lot of fun, but at the same time there's a lot of vulnerability, there's a lot of intimacy. I spend time with people sharing their hopes and dreams and heartaches, and I get to support them through that process. I get to contribute to that process. And I've been in tears with people in the studio, when they've been in tears, or I've been in tears, or, and that's, it's just, making music, personal expression is incredible. I get passionate about that.
I suppose, when you're talking about the live thing with like artist and engineer and audience, and everyone's sort of pointing fingers at each other for things not working. Like when you're in the studio with them, you sort of remove all of that, because that partnership is the essential element of making it happen, and it sort of removes a whole lot of the finger pointing, and you're really part of the whole process together.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when I'm on this side of the glass, they're on that side of the glass. They're going to walk in there, and they're going to do their thing. I'm going to be on this side of the glass. There's still a tight relationship going on, which, you're working together towards an end, and it feels like a team. There are times that things don't work out for a range of reasons. I was, talking about that with my family this morning. If a certain artist came to you and said, "Hey, I want to make a record with you," and I don't feel like I can contribute to that. It could be because they make music that I don't feel like I have the skills to work with. I don't make hip hop music. I don't make trap. I don't do that kind of stuff. And if they came and say, "Hey man, I really want, I love your studio, I love your things you've done, you want to do it," I'm like, "Okay, cool. Well, this is what I do. Is that what we're doing?" And they're like, "No, I want to do this." And I'm like, "I'm not certain how I could contribute to that." Anyway, there's been times where projects haven't worked out, or and I've handballed things to colleagues and directed people to other people. Actually, I lost a really great gig because I was like, actually, you know what? I think, I could totally have done this album, but I was like, yeah, you should go with this guy. I think I'm really busy right now, and I want to have a bit of space for a little while, but I'd love to do it. But if you're you're really keen, I think this guy'd be really great. And then they won an ARIA, and I was like, oh man. Yeah, so it goes.
Yeah. Time and place, and it's so nice that you're still pushing people to recommend others and bring that forward, and just be such a positive influence on the scene, rather than being there's so many different ways you could have handled that. That one's really important to me. I think one of our challenges in my part of the scene is there's enormous amounts of competition, and it's hard to make a living. It's really hard to make a living. Thankfully, since opening the studio, I've done okay, and I've had a lot of I've had a lot of things go my way, and that's been great. But my years ago, when I first started
dating my wife, her sister was telling some of their friends that I was a musician and producer and engineer, and they're like, oh, who is he? And she told them, and they're like, oh, who's he worked with? And she's like, oh, I don't know. And like, oh, he can't be any good. He's not famous. And she's like, no, yeah. I mean, that happens a lot. But and her response was something along the lines of like, oh, he's not famous, but he's successful. And I think, I've had some successes along the way, but the industry is quite competitive, and it's hard to make a living. And so people, I've definitely seen people try and scrabble for every opportunity, even if they're not necessarily suited to that opportunity, or even if it's not going to work well for the artist, or for whatever reason. And I can understand that. It's like, an opportunity comes along and you're like, that could be, next month's rent. So I'm totally hanging on to that gig. And I don't think I understand it, and I've definitely done that at times, but it's not great for our scene, because we end up, all these people in competition with each other. We end up with the wrong people for the job doing the thing. And I've also seen one happen a lot, which is like people don't share techniques, ideas. People don't share equipment. I mean, I have a huge amount of equipment. I can't use it all the time. And I have loaned stuff to people. I've hired stuff to people. I've done all kinds of things like that, because it's like I would like to see our scene do really well. And a couple of people in my past made efforts with me, and then I watched a lot of other people that could have helped me, clearly choose not to do so when I was much younger. And I don't want to be that person,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be some kind of like gatekeeper or a hog. It's hard, I think, when things are difficult, like financially difficult or career difficult, it is hard to maintain that kind of, no, I'm going to continue to be the person that I want to be, rather than what might make me more successful. I don't know. I don't know if that does make you more successful. I mean, some of the people I've seen act in that way, I think, man, I don't even want to be in the same room with you. And yet those people do. I don't really see how that works. But, yeah.
What was it that made you want to do that, I suppose? Have you always been like that?
I think so. And I think I'd probably say that is one of the things that one of the many things that I owe to my family. My dad's a musician, very gregarious character, and my mum is a very welcoming person. I mean, I think there's lots of other ways to describe that, but like when I was growing up, so my dad was a university lecturer, and a lifelong music educator, passionate about music education. And so there were always people in our house, always. So he always had his students. I mean, he often taught from home as well, so there'd be private lessons at home. Some of my very earliest memories are actually sitting on my dad's lap while he would teach high school clarinet. Or,
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, the amazing ability of children to not go to sleep and or sleep anywhere is unbelievable, because I would literally fall asleep. He'd be teaching, like eighth grader, teaching them euphonium, and I would fall asleep on his lap.
Wow.
Yeah. But so they, both of them, they're very, very generous in different ways, but yeah, and so it's bizarre to me when people aren't, and even if I can see reasons for why, it strikes me as quite odd. And I've been burned along the way. I remember, telling somebody, actually this happened just recently, somebody wanted to record at my studio, and they wanted to work with somebody else. That's cool. I'm totally fine with that, for a range of reasons. But then they wanted to make this jazz record, and they wanted to make it in a certain style. And so then they just had their engineer call me, and then the guy just mined me for like 2 hours of what microphone should I use for this, what microphone should I use for that. Now, what piece of equipment should I use for that to get this sound? And I was like, I kind of feel like I should just be making this record because I am just handing out all of this stuff. But I had the time at that moment in time. I had the time to have that conversation, and they went on to make a great record, and great, and the musicians had a great experience by all accounts. That record's out now. I've heard it. It sounds beautiful. And where would we be if people didn't share that kind of stuff? Like there's a lot of this weird kind of gatekeeping, and I'm not there for it.
I guess it's like especially hard in like, the classic thing of like art and money. Like there's so much tension there, and so when you're like, high level competition, so why would you hand out the thing? Because you've got to try and make money from the art, and it used to be about art, and now it's about money, and you can sort of see people change over time and things, and clearly you've worked really hard not to do that. Like the way you describe it's like, I'm consciously making these efforts to do this so that I am staying true to my values and who I am.
Yeah, I mean, it is a tricky thing, the balance of art, career, money. Like I saw like a little reel the other day of Rick Rubin saying, like if you're going to make great art, maybe you should have a day job. And I was like,
oh yeah,
I don't know. Look, I say this a lot of late. Like I barely understand how the world works for me, and I probably don't actually understand how the world works for me. I actually have no idea how it works for anybody else. A few people I've got a little bit of a window on because I feel like, we're kind of, we're in the same career and we kind of have some similar attitudes. So I've got an idea, but, but the balance of making art, making money, it's the age-old conundrum. Like that has been a thing forever. Mozart died in poverty. You've got, Bach, who's essentially a tradesman, owned by at various points owned by different things, but mostly owned by the hugest, political power of the time, the church. And that's how they were able to do it. You've got fraught relationships there, like Haydn in his Farewell Symphony. You've got, the classic idea of the, struggling artist, suffering for their art, and, and you've got people who think that, unless you're suffering for your art, you're probably not making very good art. So, who cares? All that kind of stuff. Like it's an age-old challenge. And I think in today's world, because there aren't many, you can't, like having a patron is unlikely, unless, and even then, I don't know, like we've got these weird tiers of privilege, and some people have it, some people don't, and it's a real problem that we end up with privileged people who are artists, who have the opportunity to become artists, and plenty of less privileged people just don't simply have that opportunity. And that's, I mean, often they don't even have the opportunity to engage with art, let alone the time and effort required to do it. I mean, so many times you hear this conversation like they say, oh, I wanted to be a musician, but I wasn't very good. You're like, oh yeah, okay. So what did you play? Like, oh, I played saxophone. Oh, great. How long did you play saxophone? Oh, 6 months in band. And you're like, well, of course you're crap. I mean, everybody's crap after 6 months. And you were 14, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And yet that is, you'll have people have this idea that they'll see some talented person. And I mean, I hate the term talented person. Well, maybe hate's the wrong word, but but anyway, like they'll see some talented person and be like, oh man, I wish I could do that, but I just don't have the talent. Like, you know what you could do? You could practice. You could actually explore the world of, not just, music, like explore the world of making art, like, because making art could be as simple as making something you hang on your wall that you like, like that could be a photograph that you took, it could be, I've got small kids. Our house is covered in their art making, and they've got a really interesting relationship with it. Like they will make at the drop of a hat anything,
Wow.
But then they'll also just throw it away,
right?
Or not, but not that one. That one goes on the fridge, or we don't throw it away because it's like, oh, this is great, But we somewhere along the way we lose that kind of idea that you could just do it, and my son, he's old enough to know that he's good at drawing, but he's not great at drawing. He's really good for his age, but he'll like we went to the Rook's Return last night, and there's this big chalk bird with some vine, all chalked up on the wall.
Oh, yeah.
And Finn was like, that looks amazing. I want to rub that off. I couldn't do that, so I want to rub that off. I was like, oh, that's an interesting take. But then he was just looking at it, just going, oh, this is really great. I'm like, yeah, you can draw some stuff like that. And he probably not as well, but he wouldn't be that far off. Mm-hmm. But he's like, oh, I couldn't do that. I'm like, well, maybe not yet, but it won't be long. But yet we have this idea, it's like, oh, I sang a song, I wasn't very good at it, I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the same thing making records. Like, often I have to have the conversation with people. It's like, well, this is the record we've made. It's great. It's not amazing. It's not like your favorite Bob Dylan record, but it's a good record. It's one stage of your process of being an artist. You'll make another one next year. Who knows? I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day that's made 30 records,
wow,
across their career. And they're probably, from the world looking at them, they're probably mid-career. I mean, they're probably not all their own records, but contributed significantly. Mm-hmm. And that guy's going to make a lot more records, and which one will he go, that's my record? I don't know. I mean, I'll probably have made, some years I make 40 records. I actually don't know what my record is in a year. Sometimes a record, it might take me 2 days. But, I'll probably make 20 this year.
Right.
I don't know. It's about making stuff, right? It's about making art, express it, and then move on.
Yeah. So what was it like when you came up with the concept of like rolling stock and this like collaboration and custom space, but it's like one recording room but different control rooms, and are you happy to talk about that?
Yeah, of course. Look, I came up with that. It's partly on the thing. It touches a few bases actually. I mean, it's partly on how do you make money in a recording studio. And if I have one control room and one live room, basically can make one person can work at a time, one project at a time. There's only so much, money you can make off of one project at a time. And, those numbers don't work for me. I don't charge the kind of money, I don't earn the kind of money that I could use the whole space for myself and for the records I make. So that's number one. The live room is the biggest room there. It's the room that's used the least. So you have to have one. But, you know, it's the biggest room, it gets used the least. So what are you going to do? You go, oh, well, can I share that? You go, okay, great. So now we need 2 control rooms. They're like, oh, well, that idea works great. Well, how about more? You know?
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. And then you go, well, I work a lot, right? So I need a room that basically I can access 7 days a week. I don't work 7 days a week, but, you know, I juggle various things. And pre-kids, there were definitely times I did work 7 days a week. And I don't recommend that. But I need, you know, basically I need my own space that I can access that much, which means that, you know, if I'm going to share the space, the people need their own space, you know. But then the other side to it is I don't want to be one person in a bubble. I want to be one person in a team, one person in a community. And that community, to me, is really important. The members of the community are important, and the fact that we have one is important. And Rolling Stock, I came up with that idea of the shared space, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, and it took me a while to be able to make it work. Various sort of life blips along the way got in the way, and the biggest challenge that I feel studios face anyway is real estate. I mean, real estate is so expensive, and where we can put studios, the real estate's really expensive, and therefore you have to maximize every inch of that space towards, you know, it's so funny because like we built the place and I was like, crap, where do I put the garbage bins? You know, you know, it's like, well, we factored in some storage, and it's like nowhere near enough storage because we didn't want to give away floor space to what seems like useless. It's actually really important to have good storage. You know, and yeah, but it has really become a hub. And having said that about real estate, you know, we've had our issues. Obviously, we don't own the building, and so, you know, we've had our issues there. And then on top of that, I'm watching other studios who don't own their buildings, you know, slowly fading away. And this I think is a real problem. I mean, it's partly to do with modern music making, because, you know, like I say, I've got a live room. It gets used the least out of all the rooms. So, you know, if you have a decent booth, maybe you can do 80% of your work in a, you know, like an 8 by 6 meter room, in modern sort of music production. But then you go, yeah, great. Well, where am I going to record my you know, my folk ensemble? Where am I going to record my jazz sextet? You know, where's a room that sounds nice, that has good piano? If the only ones that are available are at educational institutions or at the ABC, that is a real problem. And yet it is really difficult to make these places and make them financially viable and make them, you know, have longevity. And I think that's a real shame. Yeah, of the studios that were around when I first hit Melbourne, the vast majority of them are gone. The big ones are gone. And, you know, a few have sprung up along the way, but even them, you know, they're all essentially on borrowed time unless they own their buildings. Because, and, you know, I don't have, I don't have anything against the person who goes, hang on a second, you're paying me $50,000 a year, but this building is worth $4 million. And those guys are going to pay $200,000 a year. I'm not, like that just, the economics doesn't work. And I mean, I don't do Tats Lotto, but, if I won Tats Lotto, I'd still be, I'd just take the money and build a really great studio. I mean, I'd take care of some other life things, of course, but like, I just, all of a sudden it'd be like, oh, sweet, I can do that thing. And I'd basically do this, but bigger and better. And maybe there'd be 10 control rooms and great,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've been playing this game on the podcast where I get each guest to ask a question of the next guest.
Yeah.
We've swapped chairs, so just bear with me whilst I try and figure out how to cue this. But I got a question for you from Lucas Taranto.
Oh, yes. Great.
All right, sorry, Myles.
I wondered how this would go.
I totally forgot about it.
Oh, no, not about this. No, I wondered how this would go because, musicians asking questions of I mean, I cross the full range. I have a performance degree. I did a lot of composition. I still perform, not very often, but I still do. But I'm definitely well and truly in the studio production world, and the vast majority of people see me in that world. So it's a different question. Well, we'll see.
I think the interesting thing about this is I like to not have them know.
Oh, I know. I think it's a great conceit. It's an excellent idea.
I think this question's an interesting one because I'd like to see what you have to say about it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we're just talking about voice. So I guess my question would be, do you feel that you have your own voice on the instrument, and how did you obtain that? And if you don't feel that you have your own voice, do you want one? Is that something that bothers you, or something that you're even aware of? Or are you just happy to just be playing, or to sort of replicate and do your own thing? Yeah, because your own voice in music's everyone has it, but not everyone's is identifiable.
All right. Okay. So that is a great question for me, actually. I definitely have a sensibility, I guess. I'm not certain I would say, maybe I would say voice. I don't know. I guess it depends on how you mean that. But I would like to think that I have a I was going to say a recognizable sensibility, but even then, that's not how I would see it. Like, there's one of the things I say is that musical expression is it's not universal, but it is it's portable. It's transferable. So, like, I'll work with a string quartet. And it might be on some modern music. It might be on, the Beethoven string quartets. And if I'm engineering that, I'll make choices how I would like to hear that. And then, there'll be discussions with the musicians. If there's a producer, there'll be discussions with the producer. But I have a lens on that world. But then, I'll be working with a folk artist, and I'll be doing the arrangements. I'll be picking the tempos. I'll be, working out harmony parts and etc. And I think I still have a lens I still have a musical lens on that is mine. But I'm working with other people's expression. I'm working with other people's core, creation. And so I think it's far more subtle than the core artist on a project. Like if I'm doing the folk record, like at the end of the day, I want that person to come out saying, "This is my record. This isn't Myles's record that I happen to sing on. Like this is my record. Like I want to do everything I can to draw out their artistry and to frame it in such a way that it might be not what they expected, but what they really ended up loving." And that, I'm not going to say I always hit the mark, but I definitely try really hard to hit the mark on that. And whether that's, with your, guitar quartet, or whether it's with your free jazz ensemble, or whether it's with, and I think I'd like to think there's something that's recognizable in all of that, I think. But I definitely don't, to answer part of Lucas's question there, I definitely don't want that to be the thing that people notice when listening to the records that I make. It would be nice if they looked at the credit and went, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." But I wouldn't want them to be going, "Oh, this sounds like a record Myles made. Did Myles make this one? Oh yeah." I wouldn't want that. I think it is important to have something that you contribute. It's not, like I say, I don't feel that that's my voice, but like, I think there are lots of different ways to produce records. It's a really fraught term nowadays, because you'll have somebody call themselves a producer, and what they mean by that is they make beats and hooks. And that's great. I don't have a problem with that. And then you'll have a producer who's like, say a classical music producer. They don't touch the microphones. They don't, they're not playing an instrument on the recording. They are, almost like a conductor in an orchestra. They are, pulling various different elements together, but they're focusing on the expression of the art, and expecting that the engineer will, they'll have some input on it, but they won't touch the microphone. They'll be like, "I think we need a bit more air on this, and so we might move the microphone a bit further away," or whatever it might be. And then you'll have a producer like the classic George Martin style of production, where you'll work with the band, you'll work with the arrangements. Maybe he does string arrangements, maybe he does this, maybe he does that. And I'm somewhere in there. I don't, I'm not so much on the I make beats and hook stuff. But the, sometimes being a producer is to make a space that people feel comfortable enough to just do their thing and to do that thing really well. And other times it's like me jumping in and doing all kinds of stuff. A few times I've had people bring in they're like, "Oh, we want some strings on this." I'm like, "Oh, great, excellent. I'll book some string players. You got charts? Yep, great. Put it all together." And then they show up with chord charts. I'm like, "We got 5 string players here." And they're all kind of looking around going, "Well, what are we going to do?" I'm like, so I print out some manuscript and I write a string arrangement, and we do it on the fly, and it's wild. But yeah, I actually quite enjoy doing that. But it's all about, in that kind of thing, it's like the producer is, what does this project need? What is the role that I can contribute here? And if I'm going to contribute making a really comfortable space where these guys can really deliver, I see that as a key contribution in a production sense. If it is, like I say, like sitting down and working out what the arrangement is, picking the players, putting together a band, doing all this kind of stuff, that's also production. And I've done that. And I would like to think that somewhere in there is a core part of my sensibility contributing to that. But yeah, like I say, I'd hate for somebody to listen to a record and go, "Oh, this sounds like Myles made that." Yeah.
So interesting. Thanks, though. Thanks for taking us on that journey. It's it's really interesting hearing. Like, I feel like we're like watching you try and articulate like the concept that's not really one that matches so directly as to like, I have this sound on this particular instrument and I want it to be identifiable. It's such a different role, but it's really interesting hearing the different ways that you have sort of grappled with that question.
Yeah, because I mean, like, there are times where you absolutely, I think, you want people with an incredibly distinctive voice. Like, I worked with this great artist, Lindsay Phillips, 12 years ago. Incredibly distinctive voice, incredibly distinctive songwriter, but also incredibly distinctive vocal delivery. And it's wonderful to hear that, and the last thing you'd want to do is go, "Oh, okay, that's what you do. Well, let me alter that. Let me make it more like my voice.
Here's what I do."
yeah, totally. And the upside of that is there's some people that just do not like that voice. That voice doesn't connect with them. Okay, that's fine. There's loads of voices that don't connect with me, and then there's loads of voices that do. And I mean, on that point, I was talking with my son about that today, actually this morning. And it's like, there's loads of great music being made all the time that you don't have to like. It's not to your taste. And I love music. I love the breadth of expression that is in the musical world. I don't, listen to certain kinds of music for, while I'm cooking dinner or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But, music made with skill and passion, I am probably going to find something in there that I can enjoy and appreciate. And especially if it's made well, then, come to my studio, let's do something. Like, I'm going to engage with that. But, might not be, the next record I work on might not be that artist's cup of tea at all, and I'm not really interested.
Yeah. So what is it about, like the Melbourne scene that you, I suppose, have engaged with so much that like you've set yourself up here? Because like you've traveled and you've done lots of different things, and
I mean, I haven't worked heaps I haven't worked much at all in the big centers. Like, I spent a little bit of time in New York. I've hung out in Berlin and London, but not heaps, but not heaps by any stretch of the imagination. The thing about all those places, to me, they kind of feel like the uncle or aunt or something to Melbourne. Melbourne feels like the young, kind of feisty, bit scrappy, but doing good things, kind of, I don't know, niece or nephew or something. I mean, there is so much great music being made in Melbourne, in Australia broadly, but in Melbourne, I mean, it's bonkers how much great music is being made, how much great music we export, how much, I mean, it's just wild, and the breadth of it is wild as well. I mean, all of the stuff I've talked about, you could go and see in the next, maybe not every night, but in the next month, you can go and see great jazz of several different flavors, by young people, by older people, by everybody in between. You can see professionals, you can see amateurs, you can see professionals, tight with amateurs, and I don't draw those definitions other than, purely as it's not a value judgment at all. I mean, a lot of the people I work with would be technically classed as amateurs because they're not making their full-time thing, but I just don't care about that stuff. But then you want to go and see heavy music. We got plenty of that. You want to see real heavy music. You want to see hip hop. You want to see live hip hop. Like, it's like everywhere. Great rock. Some wonderful folk music. I mean, and telling great stories. I mean, and music from so many different cultures. I mean, I love working with, outside the Western music paradigm, as well. Like, yeah, there's just so much great music being made. I think it's a real problem how little broader Australian culture celebrates that in Australia. I mean, we send, great music overseas. They go to Europe, and then they come back and it's $100 gigs, and you're like, yeah. And part of that, really, like I say, comes back down to the real estate question, where it is just so expensive to deal with that piece of the puzzle. But what makes Melbourne unique? I don't know. I love it. It's great. That's it.
Myles, it's been such an awesome time having a chat with you about this. Thank you so much for coming and
my pleasure.
Sharing so many thoughts. It's this has been really lovely. I'm going to try and wing the final wrap up 5 questions.
Oh yeah.
See if I can remember.
Oh wait, don't I get to ask a question?
Oh yes.
Good.
It's been a couple months since I've done one of these, so thanks for helping me get back into the swing.
What were you doing in Northern Territory?
Oh, so because I'm not working at the moment, because I'm still recovering from long COVID.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's been pretty wild. So my this professor of neurology that I was seeing, he was like, just go get out into the nature.
Oh man.
And so that's what I did for 2 months. Yeah, I feel very privileged to have been able to do that. And I've come back, feeling pretty refreshed and stuff. And so we'll see how the brain and stuff holds up over the next couple of months. And
I mean, that is a thing that I think more Australians should do. Like, I mean, we laugh about the grey nomads and whatever, but like 15 years ago, we weren't even together when we did this. We were together when we got back. My wife-to-be and I drove to the Kimberleys and back.
Oh, cool.
And it was unbelievably awesome. And you can, like we did it in a Hyundai Excel. Like, we didn't need a 4-wheel drive or anything. We just packed the stuff in the car and drove. And we camped out in the desert, and it's right there. And it's weirdly in the psyche of Australia, except we kind of ignore it a lot. I've got a really good friend who's up in the APY lands at the moment, and yeah, it is a different world, and that's so great that you're able to do that. I dream of doing it again, and hopefully I'll get a chance. We go camping a bit, but hopefully I'll get a chance to take the kids up through the centre, and
So my family did that with me. My dad took long service leave when I was 9 and my sister was 7. And we had a caravan and drove up the middle and down the East Coast over 4 or 5 months.
Oh man,
Yeah. So it was 20 years since I'd done that. And so for me, it was this big deal to go back and see a bunch of these places and just be out there. And like you say, like, because my capacity has been pretty low, so I was only driving for like, you know, an hour, 2 hours, maybe a little bit more each day over like a lot of breaks and stuff. But it meant that I got this chance to just like be amongst wherever I was in such a long time stretch, and it really felt like traveling through so many different countries. Like you drive for an hour and you're through the desert, and it's all low sort of scrubs, and then the next day it's still desert, but now the shrubs are quite taller, or it's just grass, or today we're seeing a lot of emus. I wonder why that is. And
well, and that like this land is ancient, and you know, talking about music making, people have made music on this land, personal expression on this land. I mean, they keep pushing the number back, and it is phenomenal. And that it's just, I've been, you know, privileged a few times to be in the presence of incredible Indigenous song people, and it is impossible to go out away from the cities and not feel that weight of culture and that weight of expression. I mean, I don't have a good way to express that, or a good handle on that, or but yeah, you know, and you know, just to go out and listen to the world. It's a thing. Yeah,
absolutely. I should shout out to What Jan Tours. My highlight of the trip was I went out on this like tag-along camping trip with some on like Mirrathiel land, which is like sort of 6 hours southwest of Darwin. And so we went out with Joe and Lucy there for 3 days. We went camping with my partner Lucy as well, and just, you know, to just spend time. So we got 3 days with them to visit some cultural sites and go camping and hunting and cooking. And it was it was a really, really special experience. And like, I think to have the time to spend with people in their country that is in Australia but so distinct and different, just such an eye-opening experience and so lucky to have that time, because like you say, like, I don't really have the words to sort of articulate it from like the cultural structure I've been brought up in, of, you know, to describe certain things. But you know, they adopted Lucy and I into their family and gave us their names, and we got to eat and, you know, just do life for just a short 3 days. But that experience will last with me forever, and just changed the whole perspective of everything else I got to, you know, engage with after then, from Kalukalu and Uluru and Katatuja. Like, it's incredible. And everyone should get out and really experience what, like, you know, Australia is. It's cities and that too.
And I'll tell you one little story. I mean, it's not little in my head, but I got to go up to Darwin and work with some music making up there with Netanella Mizrahi and the Jari project. So it's a bunch of musicians from the Darwin Symphony Orchestra, and she had a partnership with an Indigenous songman, and he's since passed away, and I'm not certain on the cultural practices, so I won't use his name. But it was absolutely incredible experience, and you know, I spent a couple of days up there recording with the ensemble, and he came to that, but he didn't sing with the ensemble. And then afterwards, after we'd done our takes and, you know, got our backing tracks done for him to sing to, we went into another room to record the vocals. It was all at the university, and so they didn't have a studio, so I took gear up, and we sort of made space to do what we needed to do, and I set up the microphone, and as you usually do, you're like, okay, we're going to do a few takes. I'll just make certain everything's fine, and he'll sing for a bit, and I'll tweak things, and then we'll do it again, and maybe we'll talk about it and check the arrangement, all this kind of stuff. And he was, these were all the pieces were a partnership between Nat and Ella, who composed the music for the instruments, and him singing, and he was singing cultural songs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I set up the microphone. I'm like, cool, you happy, comfortable? Yeah, great. And I hit record, and here's the music, and he starts singing, and it was utterly incredible. And then there's, he finishes, and there's a little moment, and like it was quite emotional. And then I was like, okay, all right, I'll make a little adjustment with the microphone. He was quite a tall guy, and I'll make a little adjustment. We'll go again, and there's this little pause, and it's like, no, I've sung that. I'm not singing it again. I've expressed that with, he didn't use all those words because, and it was absolutely clear that it was like, no, I've expressed that now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just going to do it again,
Wow.
And I was absolutely floored. And then, and I can't listen to that piece without tearing up. It's, yeah. And like I was saying, like you hear the music, and that, is directly connected to that country and to those people who lived on that country and walked those lands and connected with that country and cared for the country and were cared for by the country.
Well, Myles, what question would you like to ask our next guest?
Well, I think, our art and our industry gives us a platform. We're privileged to have a platform. Some people bigger, some people smaller, but we all have a platform. And somebody a long time ago said to me, if you have a platform, you have to use it. There's so many things going on in the world that are challenging, and you need to use your platform for good. Back on that idea of art making over money making. I don't, you got to do both. But I think the thing is, you have a platform. All artists, all art creators have a platform. What are you using your platform for? Exactly that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Well, apply these final questions as you will, but I'll ask them as they are.
Okay.
What's your favourite venue to play in Melbourne?
Well, I actually haven't played a whole bunch in Melbourne.
I'll open this up to producing and engineering spaces as well.
Yeah.
If that is.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I'm also not so fussed about. Space is really important, but it's. Look, I don't know. I think that I'll go back to places that are made by and for people with passion. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of those in Melbourne. So you can have a great time. And this is sad, but Open Studio is closing. But you can go to Open Studio and have a cracking time. Turn around and go to Jazz Lab, and same deal. Go to the Recital Centre, and you can be in a place that people have made with skill and passion for people to express themselves in. It's great. It's a great venue. And every now and then, you'll walk into one of those places and be like, this doesn't feel that great right now. There's something going on. It doesn't feel that great. It feels like it's too focused on, being cool or making money this week or whatever. And it's the same thing for studios. I want to be in a place that's, where people are passionate about the thing we're about to do. Yeah.
Do you have a dream venue that you'd like to work in or play or record at?
Absolutely I do. The issue is like, dream as in, does it exist and I dream of going there, or dream as in like, I can dream this place? Because the latter, I totally will hopefully be my next studio. I don't know how that's going to happen yet, but I basically want to do Rolling Stock, but bigger, and with more people and more access, and I'd love to make that happen.
Wow.
And like, we built that on the smell of an oily rag and the fact that an enormous amount of people contributed. Like, we built it out of mud brick, and the first day there were, 15 people there or something. Like, we got a 4-hour workshop from the guy who sold us the mud bricks, and then we went, all right, and away we went.
Whoa, what an experience.
And there were a lot of people involved. Some people came for a day, some people came for weeks at a time. And that community, it made me think of like, people have been building mud brick houses for millennia, and then living in them. You get together as a community and you build a house and great. And I loved that, and that's my dream studio, is that we build another one that has better access, more access, better access, more people. It's just but in terms of a dream venue that exists, I'd be silly to say that I wouldn't love to go and record at Abbey Road or the Motown basement or places where I've got a book a friend loaned me called Temples of Sound.
Ooh.
And it talks about like these places.
Okay.
And there's temples is kind of a good word. It's like it's also a little bit like hallowed spaces, like or like churches or something. But I also love to make records anywhere. So I've made records in, I used to have this joke that I've made records in concert halls and mud huts, and I made a record in Eswatini, as it's now called, which really was in a mud hut, with a thatched roof and ganja drying on the walls and with a bunch of Rastafarians, and it was awesome. I loved it. But, I also like it when you go, hey, do you have the thing? And they're like, oh, yeah, and they open up a drawer, and then there's all the microphones you could possibly imagine. And you're like, cool, well, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a long-winded way of saying I haven't got a specific one.
No, it's awesome. No, I'm excited. All right, Myles, what is your coffee order?
If I'm at a cafe, it's an oat latte. If I'm at the studio, it's like double espresso after double espresso.
Yeah, you said how many? Like 4 or 5 or something?
Yeah, sometimes more, sometimes less. But I'll easily do 3, 4. Yeah.
Sorry that I don't have coffee here for you.
But I don't actually need it. Like, this is the thing. It's like at the studio, it's almost like, okay, I need a break. Walk down the corridor, hit the button, because it's an automatic machine. Hit the button. It becomes a little ritual.
Yes.
I have a little moment.
I was just thinking that the ritual of doing it more so than...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Favorite venue to get food after a gig in Melbourne?
Yeah. Probably some kind of like ramen or like Asian hot pot. Yeah. That used to be a thing back in Bennett Slaney's days. You just walk a couple of blocks over and
yes.
Down into Chinatown. But anything like that. And who doesn't love a good kebab, or I like food, yeah.
Is there a favourite spot near the studio in Collingwood?
I have well and truly explored all of the spots near the studio in Collingwood, and there's a lot. What's my favourite there? There's a sushi joint there that is really great, and I'm going to forget the name of the sushi joint up on Smith Street. The Korean barbecue, Belly Q, is great. There's a really nice, and it's gone through several transitions since I got there. There's a really nice cafe. It's now called, I think it's called Ageyo, is how it's pronounced, Ageyo, and it's this young Ethiopian guy. They don't have much variety in the food, but it's excellent, and I'm fairly certain it's all homemade. So he brings in stuff from home, and the coffee comes from his family's coffee plantation.
Oh,
so it's super cool.
Yeah,
and it's very low key. And before that, it was this awesome sandwich joint that just had the best Reubens. And before that, but yeah, again, I mean, Melbourne is the great melting pot of all this. Like, you go up the road, you can get Vietnamese. You can get two different kinds of Vietnamese. You can get Japanese. You can get Sri Lankan. There's, you can get your pub grub. There's two different pubs there. There's, it's just, there's so much good food.
Yeah, we're pretty lucky in Melbourne, hey?
Yeah.
What is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
Yeah. A lot of people gave me advice when I was younger, and I didn't take most of it. I'm not certain that I think, well, so one of the, I get a lot of people who email me or call me, I want to come and intern at the studio, or they want to come and they've got to do some kind of work experience for university, which, I don't want to get on a big rant about it, but to me, that is wild. One, so many people are like, hey, I want to, I'll come and do some work for you there, and then, you could give me a job. I'm like, there aren't any jobs. And whoever's telling you that you can just call up a studio and get a job, either they don't know what they're talking about, or they're actually being disingenuous, because, I mean, there are so few jobs in studios. It's like you might as well apply for a job in the space shuttle. But as I say to them, there's loads of work. There's heaps of work. I can't employ you, but you could, you can go and get a band. Go find a band. Go to some gigs, see some bands, find a couple of bands you like, convince them to come to the studio with you, and and if you need help, I'll work with you. But that's on you. That's you doing that. That's not me going, oh, here's $100, make a record for me. It just seems really unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
So what would I say to my younger self? I don't know, just keep doing it. There's been, various kinds of, things. I remember when I was in high school, I think it was, Dead Poets Society, talking about suck the marrow out of life. And then I saw it in Adam Elliott's thing when I was at uni. It's like, life is like a cigarette, smoke it to the butt. And it's like, just, do it. Just find your thing you're passionate about, and then just suck that thing dry. There's definitely been times I've done that, and there's also been times I've just
Thank you so much, Myles, for doing this. I feel very privileged to have you here, and I guess finally, for listeners of the podcast that might want to get in touch with you, to come and do some work or collaboration.
Sure.
I'll check on the website. You've got a couple compilation playlists of different stuff you've worked on.
I mean, maybe don't look at those so much, because I struggle to keep them up to date. I mean, there are some of my favorite records up there.
Yeah, I think last updated like 2021. So I was like,
I've made a few
maybe it's not the
since
newest one.
no. I've made a lot of records since 2021. But I mean, there are two Myles Mumfords in the world. One is me, and one is my nephew. It's a funny family story, but I don't need to go into it here. But he's tall, blonde, works in finance, and is in the USA. So I'm not him. So you just Google me and yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, Myles.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Our Drummers Musicians. I hope you enjoyed diving into the world of another musician as much as I did. Help us grow by leaving a review and sharing the podcast with your friends, family, favorite artist, or anyone else who might enjoy it. For more info and updates, visit ourdrummersmusicians.com. See you next time.